welcome to the final meeting of 2024, the December 10th regular meeting of Santa Barbara City Council. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll, please?
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Here.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor Rouse.
Here. All right, very good. Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda at this time.
Okay. Well, if you're not, then neither are we. Mr. Clerk, you have some items to read on the consent calendar.
Yes. Item 2, subject introduction of ordinance authorizing a utility easement to Southern California Edison for the installation of electric vehicle charging facilities at the East Side Library at 1136 Montecito Street. Ordinance introduction. The recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the Public Works Director to execute a public utility easement deed to Southern California Edison on city library property located at the East Side Library. Item 3, subject approval of required documents to implement Measure I 0.5% transactions and use tax implementation with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Ordinance adoption. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending section 4.15.060 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to replace reference to the State Board of Equalization with reference to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Item 4, subject a resolution denying the appeal and upholding the decision of the Planning Commission regarding the 101 Garden Street Hotel project. Resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara denying the appeals of the Law Office of Marchitillo on behalf of Keep the Funk, Inc., Stephen Johnson, and Rich Unterman, and upholding the decision of the Planning Commission to approve the project at 101 Garden Street. Item 5, subject amendment to position salary control resolution 24-141 with updates to classification and compensation for certain positions. Resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution 24-141, the position salary control resolution for fiscal year 2025 to amend the established salary for positions as listed effective December 28, 2024. Item 6, subject increase in construction change order authority for construction support services and design agreements for the Central Library renovation project, resolution and agreement. With the recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066 adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate funds for the construction of the Central Library renovation project. Item 7, subject acceptance of $7,500 from Heal the Ocean, resolution. The recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066 adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to increase revenue and expenditure appropriations by $7,500 in the fiscal year 2025 Waterfront Department Abandoned Vessel Fund for a donation received from Heal the Ocean to incentivize participation in the department's vessel turn-in program. And item 8, subject certification of election results for the general municipal election of November 5th, 2024, resolution. The recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara reciting the fact of the general municipal election held on November 5th, 2024, and declaring the results and setting forth such other matters as required by state elections law.
All right, very good. Are there any items on the consent calendar that council would like to pull? Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'd like to pull item 4 to vote separately.
Okay, very good. Any other items from council? All right, do we have anyone online regarding the consent calendar, Mr. Clerk?
No one online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. And with that, I will entertain a motion on the balance of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Moved by Jordan,
Second.
second by Alejandro Gutierrez. All right. May we have the vote, please?
This vote is to adopt the balance of the consent counter minus item 4, moved by Mayor Pro Tem Jordan and seconded by Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez. Go ahead and vote, please.
All right, passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll bring back item 4 for a vote in a moment. Can we get a report from the Ordinance Committee today, please, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today we had a discussion on changes on the ordinance governing watering meters for particularly affecting methods to improve the process for low-income multi-unit family housing, and that passed unanimously with a recommendation forward to City Council.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to move to general public comment. That's 3 minutes at the dais for anything that is not on today's agenda but within the purview of this body. First commenter will be Pat Kelly. Mr. Kelly.
Good afternoon. Mayor, council members, city manager, and staff. My name is Pat Kelly. I was the Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer for the city from 1993 to 2015 when I retired. With the writing of a new long-range capital improvement program in progress, as representative of the Mission Heritage Trails Association, I'm here to promote and recommend the inclusion of a simplified bike ped passage between the Mission and the Santa Barbara Natural History Museum into the CIP and eventually into the next budget. A more expansive project was presented to Council back in February 2015 and was positively received. Council then asked staff to pursue grant funding for construction, which unfortunately went nowhere because I believe the scope of work was expanded too far to include the existing bridge. Replacing the bridge, the existing vehicular bridge, is not necessary for a safe passage project. We recommend using city funds to promptly complete the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, process using the city's efficient and very competent public works staff for a simplified project. We believe this intuitive need for a safe passage with community support is documented in our letter with attachments, which we just submitted to the clerk and into the record. This letter includes a 2017 document which we prepared titled Preserving, Renewing, and Enhancing a Cradle of Santa Barbara, identifying significant community support at that time for a safe project in the corridor between the museum and the Mission. Also attached is the 2017 pedestrian bicycle flow analysis, which concludes that pedestrian and bicycle improvements are warranted there. Included in our submittal is the 2024 Safe Passage project summary, which describes in a little bit more detail how that can be accomplished. We hope this information will make the CEQA document preparation more efficient. Having been deeply involved in the city's CIP process for decades, I am confident the city has significant capital funding resources to fund this proposed secret effort. Yes, council and staff are challenged each budget to balance policy priorities, for example, Vision Zero, with the people's needs. We believe this project accomplishes this. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Okay, very good. Mr. Jordan has a question.
So several of us have, I know, had conversations both with your group and also the city administrator, and I know there's work going on in the background, and I just wondered if we could ask the city administrator to give us a overview of what's going on.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Jordan, and I appreciate the work Mr. Kelly and I know also Mr. Sweeney had put forward and submitted some materials earlier. We just quickly, Public Works staff is reviewing, and this is a much more comprehensive proposal than what we had received previously, so we'll take a look at that as well. But talking about options for moving forward with options and alternatives to this bridge for pedestrian and bike safety. One thing in the meantime, just because of the crashes that have been happening there, Public Works is going to try a pilot program to put some rumble strips in the curve leading up to the bridge approach, which will allow us to test out if it's, a driver inattentiveness issue that is causing those crashes into the bridge. And it's a relatively cheap and expensive solution that we might try, and we'll see how, if that in the interim does a little bit of work, at least to maybe help prevent some of these crashes. But we are working on sort of evaluating what might be able to be put in this year's CIP. So I appreciate the advocacy.
Thank you. And Ms. Sneddon has a question as well.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'm just reaffirming that Councilmember Eric Friedman and myself were appointed as sort of ad hoc committee members very specifically for this corridor, and just ask that we continue to be involved so that we can really see this forward. Thank you.
All right.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you again.
Mr. Clerk, is anyone on the line for general public comment?
No hands raised online.
Okay, no, with them. And with that, we will close general public comment, and we will go to our public consent items. Ms. Sneddon, would you like to speak to it, or you just need to vote separately? Okay, very good. I do have a public speaker on item 4. That's Mark Chitillo. Didn't even give you a chance to warm up. You just have to jump in.
I like it that way. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Mark Chitillo. I'm here on behalf of Keep the Funk. Item 4 is the findings that codify your council's decision with respect to the Garden Street Hotel project. I wanted to appear today, Keep the Funk asked that I appear in order to impress upon the council and the city and the community our continuing concern over the future of the Funk Zone and the importance of maintaining a rigorous planning process for projects that are there, and to encourage the city to look at some enhancements to that area, including the development of a neighborhood or a community program, planning program for that particular area. Because it is a unique area of significance as defined in our local coastal plan and then in the Coastal Act. And I think that kind of got lost in the process of review of the Garden Street Hotel. Turning to that project and the matter that's before you today, as we reviewed the findings, it's our belief, and I got a letter in this morning, identifying some specific concerns with respect to the findings, the failure to really address the issues that were raised by the community in the 3 appeals that you heard. Findings are supposed to trace the analytical route between the evidence presented and the conclusion, and it was really it's a one-sided process that's shown through those findings, and we would hope that indeed it was not, and that in fact this process was one that was more robust and did involve a consideration of the issues of contamination of the area and the impact of the unresolved remedial action plan. In fact, we're still steps away. There's been no human risk assessment, health risk assessment, and only a cursory preliminary site assessment. So you really, I think, have done a disservice in moving ahead with this project before having that information, but that was the will of the council. We also question the fairness of the hearing because of the last-minute submittal by the applicant. Under the city's procedures, and we also submitted information at the last minute, and it really required an opportunity for a more robust back and forth. These are the procedures that your council has adopted. I have talked to the clerk about potentially having a more defined process for resolving appeals and ensuring that there's an opportunity for some response to late submitted documents. But in this case, the applicant submitted a 97-page technical series of memoranda and documents on the afternoon of the day before the hearing, and there was no opportunity to rebut that or to respond. So that made that process unfair, and we object to the adoption of the resolution that's before you today. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll entertain a motion for this item. Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move staff's recommendation on item 4.
I'll second.
Okay, first by Jordan, second by Freeman. Mr. Jordan again?
Just have a brief comment. Mr. Chicello's been around as long as me, but I'll double dip on that one as both a member of the executive team and board member at downtown Santa Barbara and a planning commissioner. There were conversations with the Funk Zone et al. In a big scope to work on a plan down there. And the city, both the city and the downtown organization were rebuffed by the stakeholders at that time in the Funk Zone. Totally agree with the preface of your remarks outside of the 101 Garden Street Hotel comments, but totally agree with that it's time to broach that again, and probably any help you could provide in that would be great. But we did walk through that early on in the Funk Zone, and the city was asked to step aside and let it organically develop. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I wouldn't have commented except for that I just want to keep clear that the issues that I'm supporting, as Mr. Chitillo also described, were the issues of the contamination, the assessment and the environmental impact reports needing to be updated, the cumulative effects of contamination, and particularly underground parking and the plans for that in an area where we have modeled and accepted sea level rise within our own internal documents and public documents as well. So just to make it very clear that even though there are other comments about other planning documents, very clearly to me, I'll be voting no on this because I can't make the finding that it's a good idea to do underground parking here.
All right, very good. And with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor. May we have the vote, please? Mr. Clerk.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Jordan and seconded by Councilmember Friedman to adopt the recommendations as made by staff. Go ahead and vote, please.
Motion passes 5-2 with Mr. Gutierrez and Ms. Sneddon dissenting. All right, very good. And with that, we'll move on to Councilmember Committee Assignment Reports. Anybody do anything besides go to a Christmas party in the last couple of weeks? Apparently not. All right, very good. And with that, we'll close that item and move on to item 18. Would you read the item in, please? Mr. Clerk.
Yes, item 18, subject appeal of Planning Commission's approval of a hotel project at 17 through 21 West Montecito Street.
All right, very good. This is a hearing about an appeal of a project. It's a quasi-judicial hearing. So with that, we have to be very careful about the information received and processed. Are there any council members that have an ex parte conversation or contact to report about this issue? All right. Seeing none, I'll go over the format and how we're going to do this today. We'll first off and have a staff report, and that should take 20 minutes or less. And then we'll move on to the appellant. The appellant has also 20 minutes. And after that, we'll have the applicant who has 20 minutes. And then the staff would have 10 minutes at the end to respond or to rebut anything that came up in those conversations. As you're giving your testimony as either appellant or applicant, you have the ability to reserve some of that 20 minutes for rebuttal. But once again, that's the limit of your testimony will be those 20 minutes. Council may or may not engage you with questions about this when it's all said and done. Council questions will happen after all the testimony, and there'll be public comment, and then we'll have deliberations. All right, and with that, we'll go to the staff report. And Mr. Clerk, would you set a 20-minute timer on there for me, please, just so they can keep track of what we're doing?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and members of the public. I'm Megan Arciniega. I'm the senior planner of the Planning and Development Environmental Review section. I'll be presenting the appeal item for you for the hotel at 17, 20, and 21 West Montecito Street. I'm also joined by my right by Tina Dye, the chief building official of the city, who will be also speaking to some portions of this appeal item. So the purpose of today's hearing is for the council to consider an appeal by Steve Johnson of the Planning Commission's action to approve a 44-room hotel with an underground parking garage based on concerns related to potential flood hazards. The project site is located in the West Beach area along West Montecito Street, adjacent to the Highway 101 and the train station. You can see an aerial photo here. You can see the train station in the bottom right-hand corner as it wraps around, and then Highway 101 to the top left of the screen. The project site includes 3 parcels that would be merged as part of this project. That's 17 to 21 West Montecito Street. All combined, it's an 11,839 square foot lot. It's located in the HRC2 zone, which is a hotel and related commercial zone. This zone is specific to encourage hotel development and visitor serving uses, commercial uses. It does not allow residential development. It is in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. And it has a coastal land use plan designation of hotel and related commerce 2, medium-high residential. Although that designation, land use designation, does say medium-high residential, it does not pertain to this site. That's a greater overlay zone. Here's a street view image of the 3 parcels as you see it today. So the first being the Ducati building that is developed. The in-between parcel is currently vacant, although it does have some storage containers and kind of shade structures. And then the last parcel is the white building that you can see there, kind of in more of a dilapidated condition. The project would demolish all existing structures on site and build the new 44-room hotel. It would include 42 parking spaces, and it would be a 3-story building with a roof deck. The discretionary applications that the Planning Commission approved were a parking modification to allow less than the required number of parking spaces, a development plan to allow construction of an 11,255 square foot non-residential development, and a coastal development permit to allow development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. They also made the CEQA determination that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15332. There are 4 main appeal issues before you today. The first of the appeal issues is characterized by the project being not consistent with coastal land use policy 5.135. The appellant contends that the project is not consistent with this policy and that the staff report prepared for the October 3rd review failed to note land use policy 5135 in its analysis. This project site is actually, 5135 applies to screening area 6, which is an inland coastal flooding area that does not encompass this property. It asks for removal, avoidance of high flood hazard areas and restricts basements, but because the project site is not in that screening area, 5135 does not apply. It should also note, so here's a map of that screening area. You can see the project site falls outside of it. There are other flooding policies and other flood regulations that do apply, but this one does not. So the site is not located, also not located in what the flood code designates as a high flood hazard area. That's a specific term under flood code. Those sites are only sites subject to high-risk flood hazards that are immediately adjacent to the ocean coastline with high-velocity wave action and breaking wave heights greater than or equal to 1.5 feet. That does not apply in this location. It is also not located in a tsunami zone, which is a different type of flooding that can occur, but it is in the FEMA flood zone, AE flood zone, which is basically alluvial or flooding caused by Mission Creek. So there's the tsunami zone, which the site is distinctly not included in, and then here's the AE flood zone that does apply to the project. Appeal issue number 2 is based on the concern that the Planning Commission approval was based on incomplete information. The appellant contends that the staff report states that the floodplain administrator confirmed that a subgrade parking for the project is allowed, but no reasoning was provided for the confirmation. And to this issue, I'll turn it over to building official Christina Dye, who will fill us in on the analysis in that regard.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tina Dye, Chief Building Official and Floodplain Administrator, and I will get right into addressing appeal issue number 2. The FEMA considers buildings with both non-residential and residential uses to be mixed-use buildings. And as per the staff report, non-residential and resident are fully engineered buildings. If fully engineered mixed-use buildings may be designed with below-grade parking per FEMA requirements. Please, thank you. So this project meets FEMA's definitions of a mixed-use building because it contains both residential and non-residential uses. And it does meet the criteria of a maximum of 25% non-residential and 75% residential. Habitable spaces, such as hotels, are considered residential floor area, and non-residential common areas that serve the for non-habitable purposes are considered non-residential. Oh, yeah, back one. Sorry about that. I just wanted to point out that the non-residential spaces definitions per FEMA do include the parking garage, so that can be considered part of the 25% non-residential. Thank you. And then the project also has to comply with the city's local floodplain ordinance, and it does this by the requirement of having all habitable spaces designed or raised above or to the design flood elevation, which is 1 foot above the base flood elevation. No, not yet. And the project has to be fully engineered to ensure that it resists any potential loading from floodwaters. And it does have to have dry flood proofing, which in the staff report is explained, is measures that make the structure and its utilities and equipment watertight, with all elements substantially impermeable, and with the structural components having capacity to resist the flood loads. Next, please, yes. And then appeal issue number 3 was that the parking area should not be included in the building area. FEMA regulations P0237 specifically include parking as non-residential floor area to be included in the 25% that counts towards the mixed-use definition. And the definition, according to FEMA's interpretation, is that the basement, for flood management purposes, it's an area of the building that having its floor subgrade below ground level on all 4 sides. So this project is designed that way. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And finally, the 4th appeal issue for your consideration is that the appellant contends that the project is not consistent with sound community planning findings. For a non-residential project, a development plan is required, and a part of that development plan approval is the ability to make the finding that the project is consistent with the principles of sound community planning. In May 10th, 1988, the City Council adopted a specific list of policy documents that were to serve as the standard of review for sound community planning. So essentially, the general plan, the coastal plan, and other plans that are in place and adopted become the threshold of what the city considers sound community planning. Therefore, if a project is consistent with the city charter, general plan, coastal plan, and zoning ordinance, it's considered consistent with sound community planning. The project was analyzed against these regulations as part of the Planning Commission staff report, and staff continues to confirm that the project is consistent with those, and therefore the findings can be made. Staff recommends that the council deny the subject appeal, thereby upholding the Planning Commission's approval, and make the findings in the Planning Commission resolution subject to the conditions of approval contained therein, and direct staff to return to council with the decision and findings on the resolution.
All right, very good. And that concludes the staff presentation. Thank you very much. We will move to the appellant. Mr. Johnson, you have 20 minutes, and once again, you can use them all at once, or you can reserve some at the end, and we'll keep track up here that you can reserve for rebuttal, if you'd like. And you let me know when you're ready to go, please.
Just 1 minute.
And by the way, now that we have a moment, I'm going to say if there are people who are online or present that want to speak publicly about this once all the testimony is in, I'm going to accept those submittals until 3 o'clock. So, thank you. That'll be the cutoff time, Mr. Clerk. Okay, Mr. Johnson, whenever you're ready to go.
Thank you. Council members, thank you for your public service. Thanks also to staff for assistance in this matter. My comments will focus on 3 issues, and I must apologize, when I filed the appeal, I had not been aware of these issues. I've been studying this ever so much the last couple months, and I've discovered 2 more that I wasn't able to get into the 4 points that have already been noted by staff. So the 3 areas will be the driveway ramp. There's no designated floodway for Lower Mission Creek. That has consequences. And the building is not mixed use, it's residential. Let's look at the current design. There's a section, and if you look at it, the floodwater will simply pour into the basement. It shows a level off the street, pretty much level, and then descending. It's not high enough. That design can't possibly work. I've drawn in the slight red how one might correct the problem. That's what's been done for every other project in the city with subgrade parking in a flood zone. They elevate the ramp to get it above sufficient level. Not done here, and can't be done here with the current design. That too steep and too quick a drop. Not going to be possible to do that. I brought this to the attention of the floodplain coordinator, and he alerted me that flood shields was a possible remedy. So I've done a little study on flood shields. They are a possible remedy, but they were not part of the plans, so the HLC didn't get to review them for what the appearance might look like. They're not used anywhere else in the city for very good reason. Shields do not work if a agitated driver pulls into the driveway and parks on top of the shield. It won't lift up. They have to be automatically deployable. They cannot be deployed in advance. They have to be automatically deployable. The parking already requires a modification. It has insufficient spaces. It's asked for modification. There are better solutions. Alternatives should be considered for the parking. Next issue is the fact that there's no floodway designated for Lower Mission Creek. I have here I'll ask you to take my word for it. That's a clip from the 1991 firm map that shows distinctly that the floodplain is not identified below Gutierrez Street. It's gotten worse since then. The 2011 flood insurance study shows that there's no floodway here it is. There's no floodway below Carrillo Street. Somehow that floodway was found inadequate, or for some reason it's not on the latest firm map. There's a serious consequence to not having a floodway designated. 44 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 60.3 C10. The guts of this is, if you have not designated, if there is no floodway, regulatory floodway designated, then no new construction is allowed unless a determination is made, a demonstration about cumulative effects. This is a very serious consequence that FEMA uses to try to get communities to adopt a floodway. Now, I could speculate on why there's no floodway on Lower Mission Creek, but I want to take your time on that. The fact is, there is no floodway. I've contacted FEMA. I spent an hour on the phone with them a week and a half ago. They emailed me confirmation that a demonstration is required. The floodplain coordinator was copied on that email. Here is the text. I forgot to scroll up the text from 44 CFR with highlighted areas. No regulatory floodway, no new construction unless there's a demonstration performed. Basically, a study has to be done. Those studies are not cheap. That's the incentive to get cities to adopt a floodway rather than impose this requirement on every little project that gets built in the floodplain. And there's probably been 20 projects built. I don't think a study has been done for any of them. Okay, the main point of contention. But first, I should note that there's a lot of agreement between myself and staff. We agree that there are 4 governing standards, and I appreciate the chief building official confirming that at the October 3 review in front of the PC. Also confirming that of those 4, the most restrictive applies. That's the source of the problem here, is we've got a particularly restrictive standard, ACE 24, which identifies hotels as residential. FEMA does not. But ACE 24 does. It's the operative standard, and the city agrees with that. We also agree that residential structures cannot be located over a basement garage in a flood zone. So the critical question is the project residential or something else? I don't know. Let me know if you can read this. Maybe it's too small. It's the base, or you could take my word for it as I describe it. It's the base flood elevation. It's kind of the fundamental technical document that's created by the floodplain coordinator. He's here today, so he can clarify what he found at that time. That was a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, August 25th, 2023. And it's got a line, building use. It's got some check boxes. Residential hotel, that's the box that's checked. There's another box, mixed use. That box is not checked. So a year ago, in August, the floodplain coordinator found this project to be residential hotel. It never should have got to the Planning Commission. That's a showstopper right there. Now I think you've heard there's been a change of view. It would be useful to find out what caused that change of view. This is the document that's the information that's on the plans. Someone comes back in the future to say, what's going on here? They look at this, they are going to be scratching their heads. Okay. I'm going to anticipate somewhat the staff's argument. You've heard it already. We agree residential structures cannot be located over a basement garage, but a mixed-use building is allowed over a basement garage if the mixed-use building has sufficient amount of non-residential space. The term mixed use is badly used in this context because, and the previous statement that was presented saying mixed use, fully engineered building can be built subgrade parking under a mixed use apartment. That's not exactly right. You can have a mixed use building that absolutely is not allowed to have parking. Mixed use can have, residential and a Coke machine. That makes it mixed use, but that doesn't allow you to put parking underneath. You have to meet the 25% test. You've got to have lots of non-residential to qualify. But the staff agrees with me on this, and I compliment the floodplain coordinator. He figured this all out over a year ago. If you go back to the fine print on the base flood elevation, He spells it all out. Residential structures, mixed use. He spells it all out there, but he found it to be residential, not mixed use. Now staff is arguing that, oh, wait a minute, even though you're not allowed to have residential building over a basement, if there's a basement, it's no longer residential. The basement makes it mixed use. Straight out of Alice in Wonderland. However, FEMA anticipated that misinterpretation with Tech Bulletin 6. It defines a residential building. This is the critical point. Residential building designed for habitation. Now, the most important issue is ancillary areas. Ancillary areas of residential buildings that serve only residents are residential ancillary area. That basement is not a non-residential. It's defined specifically in FEMA Tech Bulletin 6. The residential areas, the ancillary areas of a residential building are residential. They don't convert it into a non-residential structure. And what are those ancillary areas? They include parking garages. I should really just quit here, but I'm going to do one more thing. It's all residential. It's not mixed use. There's no non-residential, whatever. I'm showing now as a document, a passage from FEMA document P-2037, which I believe staff referenced. Published earlier, published in 2019, Tech Pub 6 was published in 2021, after Congress mandated FEMA correct its documents so that they are less ambiguous. I'm just going to ask, I'd like to read one sentence and one word. Multifamily residential buildings normally include ancillary use areas such as lobbies, foyers, offices used by building management, and mailrooms for residents. Now it's got the word it. That's impossible English. There is no it. There's a they. And the question is, what does the they refer to? It either refers to multifamily residential buildings or it refers to ancillary areas. I don't think it's fair to ask the floodplain coordinator to decipher such bad language. That's, the skill set to decipher such bad language is your legal staff. But I will mention that the last paragraph in that section makes it clear what the intent is. From a floodplain management perspective, building with multiple dwelling units and ancillary use areas that support the dwelling units are not considered mixed-use buildings, so the entire building is considered residential. That's the thrust of this section, despite its very poorly written word at the start of a paragraph. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, very good. You have 7 minutes and 9 seconds remaining, if you care to rebut. With that, we'll move on to the applicant. Mr. Burrell, are you representing the applicant?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and council members.
Give us a second to reset the timer, please.
Oh, sure.
All right, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. Clay Arell, architect, AB Design Studio, architect for the project. Glad to be here before you today. I'm not going to do a full presentation of the project and drawings and all that. We're talking about a technical item here. I think that staff has done an amazing job of deciphering the code, working directly with FEMA, working directly with the consultants. This project is compliant with all codes and laws. It would have never made it to Planning Commission had it not been. There's been a lot of information, I'd say sometimes misinformation, brought about on different definitions from different sections of the code and FEMA I'm going to hopefully rely on the staff, Mrs. Tina Dye and Chris Short, to explain that further from their professional perspective, because it's not an area of my expertise. I will be honest with you, but I have read enough of it and a lot of it. But they really worked diligently with FEMA directly, with staff, and with others to make sure that this was a compliant project. This project is not requesting any code exceptions or waivers or variances as it relates to flood management. There is a parking mod on the project that was approved by Planning Commission. It's compliant and we should be able to move forward. There was a couple notes from the appellant about floodgates, or I think he called them flood shields. There's a lot of examples of this that we've done in this town in various areas, the funk zone especially, and there's lots of different products that we can use. We're not at a point in the project yet where we've gone to specifying any of those or studying the right way to do it yet, but we know that that's going to be a necessity for the driveway ramp. So we haven't been concerned about that, and the appellant brought it up, but I wanted to address it for council that we have been looking at that, and we're not at an appropriate moment to specify anything for that solution. Let's be clear, this is a mixed-use building as defined in several ways. The building code has a lot of definitions for use. They often refer to it as occupancy. A residential building, a mixed-use building has residential and commercial occupancies or uses. In this case, residential being the hotel rooms, and commercial uses being the roof deck, which is an A occupancy, and the basement parking level, which is an S occupancy. We think, again, I'll just reiterate, we've been working with staff for over 3 years on this project. We've vetted everything that we possibly can on this project. We're ready to move it forward. We've been approved at Planning Commission. HLCs love the project. They've given us project design approval. We're in a good place to keep this one moving forward. So we respectfully wish that you deny the appeal today and let us move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 16 minutes and 58 seconds left if you so choose to use it for rebuttal. And for staff, do you have further comment that you'd like to make in response to things that were mentioned here during testimony? All right, very good.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
We'll wait for questions.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to then bring it back to council for questions of staff and any of the testimony. Ms. Gutierrez.
Are we allowed to ask questions about the building itself, the hotel design? I'm just trying to understand, as we see these appeals coming through, this is the second one about underground garage. And my question basically is, why are we having underground garages in these designs? Is it because they want to keep a rooftop? Is that like a fair question to ask?
Disconnect.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Gutierrez, that's a very fair question to ask about the building design.
Okay, so my question is, why have an underground garage for this particular hotels? I mean, we have Hotel California that doesn't have an underground garage. So if you can give me a little background on why this.
And so for Mr. Arell and also for the appellant as well, so when we ask questions you're responding to, if we can stay narrowly to the question itself and we don't get further on to ancillary.
I'll keep it narrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gutierrez through the mayor. This project has gone through several iterations over the last several years, probably going back 5 years. There was a lot of rules and regulations that came from planning staff that limited our ability to do surface level parking and maintain an amount of guest rooms that makes sense for a project of this scale. And the underground parking is an expensive option, but a necessary option to be able to get the parking counts where we need them in a fashion that makes the project work. So with the underground parking, we can get more parking than if we did surface parking in this particular case.
Why was surface parking so
difficult to obtain in this project? What were the challenges that you had?
There were several challenges. First of all, circulation, and we weren't allowed to use Ray Road, which is a road that goes into the train depot, as an egress or ingress point. So it really limited how much parking we could get in that configuration initially. Plus, with adding lobby space, entry space, and other amenities at the ground floor, it really reduced the amount of parking that we could achieve on that site at surface level.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then this is for city staff. Could you explain the document that the appellant brought up about the mixed use? It was a city official document. If we can get it up there, is there any way?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember
thank you,
Alejandra.
Mayor
I'm going to
and
have Chris
Council.
Short, the floodplain coordinator, speak to it. He completed the document.
Thank you.
That document was designed by me. I've been a floodplain coordinator for 20 years. I have a little experience. I've set up the city's program. Most of what that particular document, those check boxes are items that I put in to remind myself and others who are not familiar with flood to be cognitive of some of the uses that we're not necessarily aware of. Most cities don't use programs or documents that are quite that extensive. The fact that I did not check a commercial on that has no bearing on the use of the document. It was to determine the flood elevation level. And those check marks are to clue me and others as to maybe there's other issues that we may want to comment. There were none. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Thank you for that clarification. And this question, I think Ms. Dye can answer this question. Where are other flood shields in the city? And then I think the appellant said there was in the funk zone. Could you give the public examples of where we can see these flood shields and the ones that we have currently in the city, if you can explain to the public how they work?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Gutierrez. I'm not familiar with the other areas that they're installed in the city, but I believe that Chris Short is, so I will have him address that as well.
There are various types. There are the mechanical ones that was suggested that raise up and down aren't necessarily used, could not be used in this particular application because there is construction underneath. So a flood shield would be mounted on top. Where they're located, I have done quite a few of these things. There's specific criteria for them, but they're basically bolted to a building. They could be covering up doors, windows, any element that is below the flood water elevation that would be subject to damage and to protect the building is covered. They're removable and they're stored in the building on site.
The ones we currently have are removable? Or they're just two different types, the ones that are
There's
bolted?
many types.
Okay.
There are some that come out and they fold up into an angle with a brace. Some are stacked between two walls where they put a barrier between it if it's very long. There's just different ways, different types. And that's subject to in this particular case, there's a fairly long span, so they'll probably be using a particular type that would be difficult to describe, but basically it's a shield, and it has a kicker, and it mounts bolts to the ground, and then you remove it. It's not a permanent aesthetics that would affect the look of the building at all.
And these flood shields, they just prevent the water, it slows down the water that goes into the building, or does it completely stop?
The around openings and that, they actually have gaskets that expand, or they have adjustments where you expand, and in a panel, the edges would push out and create a water-resistant element. How well that's done and everything, there might be some leakage, but the primary use for these things is to prevent damage or significant intrusion into the building. They work. There are different types.
Thank you.
And they're all removable.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I have some questions. I'm prepared to deny the appeal, but I have some lingering questions that keep recurring actually about some of these definitions, and I want to ask them now, and then I think I may need more detailed briefings over time because these keep coming up, and I asked yesterday at the site visit, and I'm just not understanding, frankly, the answers. So I'm going to give it another shot here because then hopefully I can review the answers and listen to them over again because I will be very honest. I've asked them and I just do not understand the answers. So the first one is, can you just speak to confirming what an AE flood zone is? Not all the things it isn't, but what is an AE flood zone?
This one, right?
FEMA set up the NFIP to create a map for the city. There are various zones based on their relative height of water and the severity maybe of that. Floodways, for instance, are highly restricted. You do not build in them. On the other hand, low-level water surfaces are characterized into several sets. There's a Zone A, Zone AE, Zone AO. Each one has a specific level of water that it is designed to meet or to be limited to. This site is in an AE zone. Its height or maximum height is typically 3 feet of water. This site, the highest point that hits this site is about 2.5 feet. It doesn't come up in this particular site because the grades, of course, change around the building. Some are higher and some are lower. But the highest, lowest condition where the highest water would be about 2.5 feet. So it fits within FEMA's design category of AE. That also involves velocity of water. The velocities in AEs are restricted, or not restricted, but there are recommendations for the velocity be not greater than 5 feet per second. That's what an AE is designed as.
Thank you. And then as a follow-up to that, so then the base level, and I'm sure this is all accurately done, I'm just trying to understand, that the base level would then be 1 foot above the 3 foot?
Actually, there's FEMA's definition for base flood elevation is FEMA's definition. The state has added what's called a freeboard.
Mm-hmm.
That freeboard adds 1 foot on top of the FEMA's estimate of the floodwaters.
Mm-hmm.
So this building and its floors are elevated to 1 foot above the base flood elevation. If the base flood elevation is 3, it's up at 4.
Thank you. So that's confirming for me. So then it's 1 foot.
1 foot freeboard.
Above
Yeah, the county
freeboard.
actually has a 2-foot freeboard, always has.
Understood. But for this project?
1 foot.
1 foot
Yes.
above the 3 foot designation, and that's by the AE?
Above the base flood elevation. 1 foot above the base flood elevation is what it is.
Which is 3 feet in this area.
This building, okay, the AE zone is 3 foot. Its category is 3 foot.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular zone, the highest it's going to get is about 2.6, 2.5 feet. So it- those who-
2.5, you said, at this site?
Yes, approximately, yes. And that sets the base flood elevation. 1 foot is added to that number.
Thank you. So then we're at 3.5 feet. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And then can you comment or staff, anyone comment on this ASCE 24, this question of residential, hotel, or mixed use? And again, I think yesterday it was like, well, it's defined mixed use in this circumstance, but not this circumstance, and I don't understand. And my main question is, does this use of the basement parking, does that add that 25% space that then makes it defined as mixed use? So you're sort of using that thing to define it as mixed use? And that was brought up by the appellant, that definition of ancillary items and that
Let me
question.
speak to that.
Okay.
Because ancillary areas is used for both full-on residential buildings, they have their criteria, and then mixed-use buildings also has ancillary use. When you look up the definition for mixed use, ancillary areas allows parking, very specifically. When you look at a residential, strictly a residential building, the ancillary areas obviously allows parking for the residents. So therein lies the difference. And in the mixed-use building, the ancillary areas are defined as non-residential. So we use the area of the basement garage parking or indoor storage, however, that is part of the non-residential. Because clearly it's not a residence. It is non-residential by definition for a mixed-use building. The definitions are getting mixed, and you have to be very careful which one you're looking at.
I'm trying to be very careful.
And you're-
I'll be
and
honest,
I-
I do not understand.
Okay?
Chris.
I'm trying to be careful and
take it.
apply these. My question, can I just ask very, very simply, was it mixed use designated already, and then the underground parking is approved as ancillary, or is the use of the ancillary underground parking what allows it to be considered mixed use?
Okay, I'll take a stab at this one, Chris. Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Sutton. So ASCE 24 does define hotel as residential. The appellant's correct about that. However, that's not the only standard we're using. We have the floodplain regulations from the federal government, and then we have our locally adopted ordinance, which references AACE. So it's a combination of all of those documents, regulations, if you will, that allow us to determine that the building is mixed use. To answer your question specifically about the parking being included to make it a mixed-use building, technically, yes, it is included, but it's not the only reason it's considered mixed use. There are other uses within the building that make up part of that 25% that's required.
Thank you.
That are not residential uses.
Thank you. That's my fundamental question. So you're confirming for me that it would be defined as mixed use with or without this parking?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's a really important point, I think, when we're looking at these. And then that brings me just to my last question then. That form sheet with the check boxes, it doesn't look like just an internal document note to self. It looks like something that can be used in the file for the project. And so why wouldn't the mixed use box, if it's already defined as mixed use without this other item, why wouldn't we want that box checked for our own records?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Sutton. You're absolutely correct. It's not just an internal document, and I think it's just a clerical error, to be honest.
So that box should be checked?
It should be checked, yes.
And that would let us know that, and I'm just trying to understand, so that would let us know in general that this was already defined as mixed use and doesn't rely on the parking garage. Is that correct?
The form doesn't determine that per se. It's the ratio of percentage of non-residential use and residential use. That's what defines it as a mixed-use building.
That's what I thought. And so where do we ever have that in the record? Because this question is going to come up over and over. It already has come up recently. So at what stage in the process, or where is a document or something in a record for the future, for the past, whatever, that I can look at and say, oh, this is already determined to be mixed use, so all these other things apply?
Let me explain what the purpose of that base flood DFE letter is for. It is specifically to identify the flood water surface elevation. I look at the flood maps, determine what it is. It is not a code analysis. It is not used for that. It does trigger certain things in my mindset if there's something that I need to address, but it is not used for the code. It's only designed to establish for an applicant, this is how high the floodwaters is, this is how high your building has to be set.
And does that not get defined differently if it's for a residential or commercial or mixed use?
No, base flat elevation is applicable to any building.
Then why have the check boxes?
I use that because there are other triggers that I know for when I set up during working drawings that will tell me what to use, because then it's not for a planning issue, it's for actually construction when we get into the actual drawings.
Okay, I think I'm maybe done pursuing those questions, because I will say again that I think it gives a confusing messaging, and so for the future,
Yes.
what would be the documentation that something has been designated mixed use?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Seddon. It will be on the form. There is language on the form that specifically says in red, bold writing, 75% residential maximum, 25%. So this form was marked in error, the wrong place, but that is a good place to find that information.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And if I add, Mayor and Council Member Seddon too, also it could be documented further besides that form on the plans and also in the staff report too, but that's the first spot, is this form, so just for future reference where you can see different sources where it would be marked.
All right, very good. Are there further council questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go back. And does the applicant have any need to state any rebuttal? I mean applicant, the appellant. What do you guys? Guy in the back. And Mr. Johnson, you have about 7 minutes left.
Is there any chance the staff report could be put back up? There's several screens there that I would like to rebut.
Is that possible, staff?
I don't believe, if you, the appellant's referring to the CAR, to the council agenda report, or the planning commission report.
I
There's
think the
some
PowerPoint, perhaps.
Specific screens, but, okay, I'll dispense with that. There's going to be other opportunities to bring this issue up. I would note in passing that the staff's assertion that properly engineered structure can be, subgrade parking is allowed if properly engineered under a mixed-use building. That is flatly not correct. It might be allowed under a mixed-use building if that mixed-use building has a sufficient amount of non-residential. Mixed-use building, again, it's just take any residential building, add a Coke machine. That makes it mixed use. That's not sufficient standard to allow subgrade parking. It's got to meet the 25% test. So that should be corrected. There were a couple others. I'll get them in written comments just for the record next week. But I do want to thank Councilmember Sneddon, who got to the heart of the issue. Was the building, where is the determination that the building is mixed use prior to asserting that it's okay to have the subgrade parking? Where is that determination? Have you seen it anywhere? You've got to see a calculation. It should be a spreadsheet that shows here's the non-residential area, here's the residential area. The non-residential area is more than 25% of the total area. That's the criteria. Where is it? You have not seen it in any document, anywhere. No staff report, not today. Nowhere have you seen. I would simply ask, what is the percentage for this building? What percentage is non-residential? Probably you don't see it because the answer is zero. The amount of non-residential space in that hotel is zero. Because all of the spaces in the hotel, there's just a little bit of space, there's a lobby and a few other things, those are all ancillary. They are ancillary to the residential bulk of the building. And so they're considered residential also. I may not win this argument today, but there's tomorrow. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Gutierrez, did you have a question for Mr. Johnson?
Oh, for staff.
Okay, just for staff. Thank you.
Can I go ahead and ask? For the public, And for myself, that I don't have the background in, in planning, and I don't have the background that Mr. Jordan has in serving in a committee where you look at these type of developments. Could you answer that question about how a project is determined to be mixed use? It's my understanding when you go and present a project, you do have to check certain boxes. You can't just go in there without having certain criteria. So could you explain to the public how this was basically answering the appellant's question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Gutierrez. The building code establishes use or occupancies based on the use. So structures have various uses within them sometimes. This is considered a mixed-use building. It has habitable spaces, which are considered residential. It has assembly areas, which are considered an A3 occupancy. And it has an S2 parking garage. It's a different occupancy. So by its nature, by its use, it's mixed use.
Could you explain to the public what is an S2 parking garage, and then what is considered residential? Like, can you be very specific, like you're talking to somebody that has never entered a community development building?
Sure. So within a building, there are different areas sometimes that are used for different purposes. The building code defines those uses with occupancy types, and those occupancy types are different within the same building. So that's why it's considered a mixed use, because it has some residential portions, it has some assembly areas. This one in particular has a rooftop restaurant. It has meeting rooms and storage rooms on the first floor with the residential rooms, and then the garage is for parking. So those are all different uses within the same building.
That would qualify this project as mixed use?
Correct.
Right, yeah. Do we have some sort of spreadsheet that we identify, the certain percentage in this development, just like we had mentioned? What type of documentation is in this report that identifies the percentage, if we have one?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Gutierrez. We do not have a printout of the calculation that was conducted on this project, or any project for that matter, as a part of the official document, but it is part of the plan review process.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, very good. Does the applicant have any further rebuttal?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I don't have anything further to rebut other than putting a Coke machine in a residential building does not mean it's mixed use. Mixed use has to do with the uses and the occupancy classifications of those different uses within a building. As Ms. Dye alluded to, that's how you define mixed use. It's not a Coke machine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any closing statements by staff?
Mayor Rouse, just to add to that along the lines, it's also what dictates what code applies to those sections for building code, right? So if you're having a commercial kitchen, that's a totally different occupancy, different code requirements for fire safety, for exiting, for assembly, as opposed to a sleeping area, right, where you have to have evacuation or other fire restrictions and stuff. So as it relates to development, occupancies help inform what code and regulations, safety requirements apply to that part of the building, and also what has to happen between them. So if you have some kind of kitchen happening, which this does, right, the back of house kitchen, next to a sleeping area, there has to be, I'm sure, I'm not the expert, but, a fire barrier of a certain rating, as opposed to, commercial kitchens back to back that might look different in terms of code requirements. So these are really important classifications for building code and fire code and flood code. Flood is same, right? So we want to have residential uses versus non-residential uses being very clearly distinguished, and making sure that the safety measures and code requirements that apply to that use are being identified in the building construction drawings. So this is my last point of clarification, is that those are building construction drawings. This is not a building permit yet. It is a planning approval, so this is the big picture ask of, they are proposing a hotel with these uses. If and when the project gets approved and they apply for a building permit, they would have to identify construction level drawings. That's much more detailed work. It's prepared by engineers and a different set of professionals, or a team of professionals that get at those code requirements. That level of detail is not appropriate at this stage. This stage just outlines the use that's proposed, and then those details come later. So to the comment of the floodgates, right? That's when they would identify the specific type they'd be employing, where they would go, how they fit in. So I just wanted to be clear that that's what the occupancies inform. And then last, in terms of definitions, Ms. Standard mentioned, we, and Councilmember Gutierrez, in the planning world, a hotel is non-residential, right? So it's not a house. We're not expecting, it's not long-term stay. It's short-term stay. So you might be most familiar with planning staff calling a hotel a non-residential development. That's why we have a development plan. This is not for, this project is not going to provide housing units to our community. So for planning purposes, this is a 100% non-residential project. However, flood code purposes, there's a different code, a different lingo, different terminology. We follow all of the FEMA definitions, and that's where you're hearing the, they walk through the steps of what those definitions and when it applies. So I just wanted to be clear, in the Planning Commission materials, it definitely describes it as a non-residential development. And then when any time we get into flood determinations or flood applicability, you're going to start to see different terminology. Because this appeal was wholly centered around the flooding requirement, we didn't belabor the fact that planning uses different language, but I just wanted to kind of differentiate that for the future.
All right, thank you. And with that, we will go to public comment. I have Brittany Zajic, and we have 3 minutes at the dais. Mr. Clerk, would you set the timer, please? Give us a second to set the timer, if you would. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Great. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and City Council. My name is Brittany Zajic, and I've spent way too much time talking about parking in the Funk Zone this year. However, I mentioned this at the Planning Commission and want to comment here as well today that as this project is proposed, there will be no employee parking on site. It has been documented time and time again in these appeals that hotel employees are often low-income workers traveling far away and majority by car. If it's at all possible for the council to consider, please include in your findings to ask the hotel to pay for transit of its workers in exchange for not providing any parking in a very crowded part of the city. This will ensure the safety of its workers and not exacerbate the parking issue of the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone online to comment?
No commenters online.
Okay, very good. And with that, Ms. Sneddon, did you comment? Oh.
Just deliberation.
Okay, yeah, we're going to deliberate. Ready to roll? Okay. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor House. I just want to state again, I have complete confidence that staff has calculated and applied all codes accurately, and my request is just personally that it, for those of us who don't speak, planning speak, and for the public, that these types of calculations or which codes are applying be made especially clear. And I think if I'm trying so hard to understand and can't understand, it could be my personal failing, which I'll completely own to, but I would guess that maybe somebody else may have those same questions. So just venturing forth with that. So I want to repeat, I feel 100% confident that staff and legal have all applied everything accurately in this case, in all cases. So that's not what my questions were about. It was just for me to understand. So for the future, and also for findings, now I heard it in just a little comment there, the rooftop kitchen. did not understand that that was a restaurant, and honestly, I can't wait to go there. That for me alone defines it as the commercial that's required, and so that was very clear as sort of a passing statement in there. So, but I'm fully prepared to deny the appeal based on thorough answers from staff and the rooftop restaurant qualifying. My request for the future is that it be made very clear to us what it is specifically that defines something as mixed use. I think we're at risk of this sort of narrative that a Coke machine alone will make something mixed use. I don't believe that's accurate, and I think us within the city need to be then clearly defining, well, what does then? And so if there is a narrative in the world that it's a Coke machine, we as the city, I think, need to be very clear that, no, it's much more than that, and this is what we're applying, and then this is what's being applied in this case, which you were very able to make clear that it's too early to make that determination, but it's mixed use so far based on these criteria. And I think it would help us as council. I think it helps the public understand, and I think it will help with the narrative that it's just a Coke machine, because we've heard that multiple times in different instances. And then, so that's my one request, is that we sort of make that clear to the public, to ourselves, what it is that's defining something as mixed use. And the second is, in the presentation, using 1988 documents for sound community planning, I'm going to call on us as council that maybe we need to be updating those more often than that. Maybe, every 5 to 10 years, and obviously it's not part of these findings to be making that, but I'm going to invite us as a council to commit to re-looking at documents that are sound community planning. I think we have that capacity. I think Planning Commission has that capacity, and I think 1988 was a very long time ago. But I'm prepared to move to deny the appeal based on staff recommended findings.
Thank you. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple quick questions. I just wanted to clarify on the restaurant, because the staff report, it made it seem like it was a lounge, but I'm hearing now it's a restaurant. So is it a restaurant that's open to the public, or is it a lounge that is only for the hotel guests?
Councilmember Friedman, it's only for the hotel guests. It's not open to the public.
Okay, that's different. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because on there. So the other question
Can I add to that? This is, again, where Megan was speaking, Mrs. Arcina was speaking about the differences in language from planning to building world. So the building code would designate it as a restaurant use, but it's not a restaurant per se for planning purposes.
So in the future on those, staff reports when these things come up, can you clarify that? Because it's unclear if we're voting on a restaurant that the public's going to go to or not, and that impacts the parking and how I would analyze parking if there's a restaurant or not. Because if it's not open to the public, then the parking's just for the hotel guests, versus you could have 100 more vehicles a night down there if it's a restaurant. That's for the future. The other question goes to the public comment for Ms. Connect. Being that there is no public or staff parking on here, as I understand it, is there something that we could condition to, as part of approval, to address that or not? I just want to know if we can or not.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councilmember Friedman. So my understanding is that there was a parking study done, and it's based on demand, and it meets the parking demand study, the amount of parking determinant, and there also is a valet parking study. I don't know, and we need to confer with staff about whether or not, staff parking needs were considered in that. I'm not sure on that, so staff would be better to respond to that or me. But also, that issue is not part of the appeal brought up today. So we would need to confer with the applicant as to whether or not, they're willing to address parking for staff in some manner.
Can staff answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Friedman. That is a part of the analysis that was part of the parking demand study is inclusive of employee parking. I also want to draw the council's attention to condition number 5 is that the project is also required to comply with the city's transportation demand management strategy. Basically, it's getting at multi-use and additional access, and as part of that, the hotel operator or the owner will be required to provide bus passes to the equivalent for their employees, and also provide other ride-sharing program opportunities, bicycle parking, and a guaranteed ride home program. So the city overall has a traffic strategy and applies these conditions across the board to non-residential projects such as this. So, and that would be.
So that would be
all in
part
this
of,
one.
if we approve just as is today,
They already
deny
have
the
that.
appeal, they already have those transportation demand strategies that are part of the conditions of approval.
That
for
is
the project.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll just be brief that I'll deny the appeal. I think staff did the diligence on it regarding mixed use. Just to be clear, this zone is not zoned for residential. So for those watching, this would not have the opportunity as another project to come as residential because it's specifically not zoned residential here. I think that's important in terms of the larger context, but it does allow hotels, and the site is not located, these are some of the things that stood out to me. Site is not located within the inland coastal flooding area, and then also it's not located in the high-risk flood area or tsunami zone. And fully engineered mixed-use buildings may be designated with below-grade parking. So those are kind of the things that rose to the top in response to the appeal. And so with that, I will I'll be supporting the project and denying the appeal.
Is that a second? I made the motion.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
I want to thank everybody here and just staff. What I have suggested in the past to the city administrator, and then just in the last 5 years, I've just seen how there are more and more projects like this coming to be appealed. And I think with the housing crisis that we have in the state and here in the city, we are going to get more community members appealing certain types of projects, especially hotels. And I think the community has made that very clear. And with staff, I do want to thank you for the extensive time and homework assignments that you guys do to prepare, our report. The last appeal project that came, I spent a lot of hours. I learned a lot. But as council members, you guys work on reports for months, and we have to read it within, less than a week. And like I said, a lot of us don't have that background of, development, architect. The lingo is, I constantly have 5 different architects on my phone, calling them and asking them, what does this mean? And so if I'm confused, the public is confused. So in the future, I would ask staff, and I think you heard it today, just to be very mindful that when you guys give these presentations, is you're talking to the public, and I've said it in the past before, like you're talking to a group of high school students. And because what happens is that the media writes about today's presentation, and then they, make it seem that we are anti-housing or we are in favor of certain developments, and that's not true. We have a process, and we have rules, and the state has rules, and there's a lot of miscommunication. And so today, thank you so much for answering our questions and being very detailed. Just in the future, to be mindful that not everybody understands this lingo. And I know that it's hard for you guys because this is the world you guys live in, and you don't do it intentionally. But I think moving forward, we are going to be seeing, or council is, because today is my last official council meeting, a lot of these projects coming through. And if we can fix that way of communication, and maybe in the future having community workshops and talking about certain zones, especially the Funk Zone, and District 1 is a very special district because you have different you have housing and you have the industrial, and you also have the hotels. So maybe in the future, having two, community workshops on if you want to understand the zoning in Santa Barbara and where, housing is available in the city, where we plan to build housing and where hotels are allowed. And so closing that gap. And I know I'm probably adding more to your plate, but I think it would eliminate a lot of this miscommunication and the perception that we have, that the community has of the Community Development Department. It's always struggle, and I just really want to thank you guys.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I too will be denying the appeal and siding with staff's recommendations. Resonating with me are mostly the 4 or 5 points that Mr. Friedman just read off. It's an allowable use that staff has clearly articulated responses to all the appeal points. I don't claim any expertise just because I warmed this chair up as a planning commissioner in this mess. As soon as you put something in a flood zone and then go down behind the ground, the flow chart already leaves the mayhem of the normal city flow chart and gets off into this mess of conflicting terms and when and it can't. Even Mr. Johnson's own display slides, went from mixed use and ancillary to dwelling units and habitational, as it can't be this because it says that habitation, and then it can't be this because dwellings, and none of those definitions are there. So I fully also believe that staff has vetted this completely, and I'm thankful that you aren't just sitting in a room somewhere and cooking up opinions, but you actually talk to FEMA and get a validation of your result on that, and I'm comfortable with that. It's certainly not in my pay grade to that level of detail. I think also, I heard you talk about this twice, in my words, and that is that this continual effort on appeals to talk about what ifs that aren't part of the 10,000-foot looking down initial decision. Will this work? If you dig a hole and water comes in, you need to tell us right now as part of this approval. That's not what this stuff is. It does get engineered. There's probably more work on this side going forward on this project than there has been on the front side of answering those type of details. And I guess you could lead with some of those points too, as well as maybe clear up some of the language and the mystery of some of this other stuff. But it just seems like continually we hear that you have to define this now, you have to decide this now, and it's absolutely not true. I know it's not true. That's what plan check is for. That's what engineering is for. And I guess we should hear that over and over too, so we don't get involved in those discussions. So. I will, again, deny the appeal and support staff's recommendation.
All right, thank you. I will say that when we did the State Street underpass and looked at doing the Greyhound bus terminal there as opposed to where it was before, we did a lot of this work. We did a lot of underground work, a lot of floodplain work, a ton of engineering, a ton of soil remediation and whatnot. So that's a pretty well explored area. So I'm pretty confident the staff has this one correct. I do think there are potentials for employee cooperative parking in some of the city lots, which our parking staff is looking at perhaps doing some kind of passes along those lines, because I agree with Ms. Zajic that that is an issue, and hopefully that'll be answered that way. So with that, are there no further comments? I will entertain a motion. Moved by Snedden.
And just to add to that, it will be to direct staff to return with a resolution with the findings. Correct. Thank you.
I'll second.
Yeah, with all the above?
With all that.
Okay,
And
very good.
I forgot a comment, if I might. Also, Councilmember Snedden and I were rubbing shoulders on that a reference to Sound Community Planning document of 1988, which I just referenced the Sound Community Planning document. I wouldn't put in the year. But, what went into such a document in 1988 compared to what such a document has to respond to today, it's a drastic, you could write a document like that and it might be good for 20 years in 1988. You could write a document like that today and it might be good for 5 years. When you're talking, it only took 10 years to get where we are in short-term vacation rentals. In the last 10 years, probably the housing crisis is exponentially worse. So what goes into that type of document, I think, I definitely second the welcoming of council and staff to get involved in an update to that, and recognizing that it probably needs to happen more than allowing something to be 37 years old. So, thanks.
Ms. Connect?
I just wanted to clarify, you're not making any direction to staff with
No,
regard to that.
the motion's
It's
already
just
been
a-
made.
yeah.
We just,
Thank
it's
you.
just Jordan.
Just wanted to chime in on that quote earlier.
Very good. Mr. Clerk, would you please put up the scoreboard?
We have a motion from Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Jordan, to adopt the recommendations as made by staff. Go ahead and vote, please.
And to add to that, and to also return with the resolution containing the findings. Return to council with the resolution.
Correct.
All good there, Mr. Clerk? All right. Decision passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, we have council staff communications, council member engagements. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of holiday festivities the last week and few weeks to come, but I attended the downtown Santa Barbara party, holiday party at the Libero. Attended the La Arcada walk. That was really cool. Also attended the Independent holiday party, the Sustainability Department's holiday party. That was really great. I want to thank staff for putting that together. They had all these little DIY Christmas stations that you could build ornaments and candles and stuff. It was really fun. Attended the ribbon cutting or grand opening of the Friends of State Street office at the CEC Center. Attended the Independence Local Heroes Luncheon, the Braille Roundtable, the Coastal Housing Coalition Conference. Let's see. The tree lighting hosted by the Downtown Org on State Street from the Arlington. That was great. So many people there celebrating. Also attended the, no, didn't attend that one. Yeah, sometimes I don't attend all the events, just to let everybody know. I attended the Parade of Lights at the harbor with a lot of my colleagues, and the tree lighting. Also attended the show at the band shell. That was pretty cool to see all those people being able to enjoy the new band shell and the carolers that were there. I attended the memorial for a bouncer at EOS, Roberto, who passed away. It was good to see the community come together and support him and his family. And yeah, that's about it.
Very good. Mr. Friedman.
I attended the Christmas tree lighting in front of the Arlington. Great event. A lot of people were there. Great to see all the families. And then most of my time last week, I attended the California League of Cities leadership, their leadership forum, and along with our city administrator, Ms. McAdoo was there, and Goleta City Council member James Kiriako was there. Just a couple of the highlights of the leadership summit was learning information about what's coming, mostly from state of California, but also the feds. in this coming year, and then developing the priorities for how Cal Cities is going to approach legislation and efforts to advocate on behalf of cities. So a couple things is the largest issue affecting the state budget will be federal government cuts. I never knew this, but approximately 1/3 of the state budget is federal dollars, so about $150 billion out of $450 billion. Most of that is, it's unknown what's going to happen with the change in the administration on if and what types of cuts would impact, and if that goes to the state, that would trickle down to us. So that is the big issue. The state itself is facing a $2 billion deficit, but it's really the unknown impacts from the federal government that are out there. Other interesting note was that Prop 36 passed in every single county in the state, and so how will that affect public safety legislature and what they're advocating for? There's going to be a lot of housing bills again. One in particular that's out there is allowing the purchaser of a newly constructed home, to have 10 years of no property taxes. That was referenced as something that's out there being discussed. And so it's not an official bill yet, but it's actually out there that they raised it enough in this summit, which was crazy to everybody. And good news is that in the Assembly, and I believe in the Senate, they have reduced the number of bills that our legislators are allowed to author down to 35, which means there still could be about 2,000 bills, but at least there's not 3,000 that could be out there. And just real quick, trying to go through the other highlights, and then let's see, there's one other thing. And so the top priorities that were, after many surveys through the whole membership and was refined at the summit, was the top priorities would be, one, to protect local revenues, and then the other for our increasing access to affordable housing for projects, including a dedicated funding sources, local decision-making, and also homelessness, securing investments on that, strengthening and modernizing critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, water, and electric grid. Also, I and some others raised, including broadband in that, so that is going to be in there. And then strengthening disaster and climate resiliency policies, including insurance, that will be a priority. So it was quite a packed day and a half, so appreciate the opportunity to go up there.
And Mayor, I just wanted to highlight that Councilmember Friedman will be serving as the president for the Coastal Cities Division of the League of California Cities. So that was the reason that he was invited, and I will be serving as the president-elect for the City Manager's Department. So that was why we both participated last week.
Well, congratulations to you both, I think. Ms. Ned?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I attended the Louise Lowry Davis Center, which is just an incredible renewed resource for the center of downtown. I mean, very, very exciting. Attended the Independent Local Heroes Awards, and what I love particularly about those awards are how broadly applied the term hero is, and it really is such a feel-good event, and really appreciate it. Attended the Sustainability Holiday Open House and also the Parade of Lights. And just two acknowledgements. One, Sheila Lodge last week had her last Planning Commission meeting, ending 36 years of service to the city. Started in Planning Commission in 1973. To mayor, 1981 to 1993. She was the first woman mayor, the longest serving mayor, and just Sheila Lodge is, you, Sheila Lodge, you are a treasure. We love you, we need you, and I'm sure we will be specifically celebrating her in the new year because she deserves it. You deserve it, Sheila. And then also, this is my last meeting with Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez, and I really just want to acknowledge your heart, your soul for your community, and just so much confidence that you will be serving through the years, that you're not done, and that we appreciate you, and I appreciate you, and this door is always open, and keep working together for the community, and thank you for your service.
And I just want to acknowledge that we will be recognizing Councilmember Gutierrez at the January 7th meeting, but Councilmember Sneddon will not be there, so just so that people didn't think we are not recognizing her today.
And speaking of Councilmember Gutierrez,
I actually wanted to take this moment to recognize a very special person, and it actually falls on my last official council meeting, and I'm really proud to have served my community and just honored, especially being a local raised and born. But there's somebody really special that I want to acknowledge. It was his birthday yesterday, and it's Officer Adrian Gutierrez, who's my uncle, who's also known in my district as the mayor of the East Side. And he has served his community for a very long time. And he's actually one of the reasons I decided to give back the way that I did. And he's always been a role model and just somebody that we're very proud in the community, but in the family. And just to watch him grow as an officer and his beautiful heart. And so I just want to acknowledge to Adrian, we love you and thank you so much for all your service in the community and just always warming our hearts and everyone with your smiles and your funny jokes. So thank you.
thank you. Okay, we actually have one item that isn't going to happen for a little while, so I'm going to suggest a recess. They're going to be back here in about an hour for the kids from Boys and Girls Clubs. So, we'll see you guys back in about an hour. evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Santa Barbara City Council. Reconvene our meeting now. Mr. Clerk, you have an item to read.
Yes, item 19, subject United Boys and Girls Club Gold Card recipients, estimated time of 5 p.m.
Can I get the director, Mr. Baker, to stand up and tell us what we're doing here tonight, please?
Mr. Baker's my dad. You can call me Michael. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Baker, and I have the honor of being the CEO for United Boys and Girls Club Santa Barbara County. And we have our gold card ceremony tonight, and I will remind you what gold cards are all about. So we know from the decades and decades of research done in Boys and Girls Clubs across the country that the magic number is 105 days. If we can get a child to a 10-day Boys and Girls Club, 105 days in the same calendar year, they're twice as likely to graduate high school in time and twice as likely to lead a healthy lifestyle. So what we've done is we created a program called Club 105, embracing that. So when they get to the 105th, well, let's start off with the halfway point, 52 days, which I know it's 52.5, but when they get to 52 days, they receive their silver card, and they get special privileges with their silver cards at the clubs and get to participate in different activities. When they get to the gold card status, 105 days, we give them their gold cards in every community that we currently have a Boys and Girls Club in. Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, Goleta, Lompoc, Buellton, Solvang. We present these at the city council meetings. The children are recognized. But this was the first city that did it here in Santa Barbara. It was the very first city where it happened. And then what we also realized is, and I want to tell you something very special, when they get to 200 days or more, they receive what we call the blue cards. And some of you have presented these at our annual meetings to children. The child that attends the most in the entire organization gets to choose the color of the membership card for that year. And the child that chose this year a pink card, which we've never had before, this tells you everything you need to know about Boys and Girls Clubs and the kind of kids that we help support. The child that picked this past year picked the color pink, 11-year-old boy from our Goleta Club, and the reason he chose the color pink was in honor of his mother, who was suffering from breast cancer. So if that doesn't tell you what you need to know about the youth of our country leading us, I don't think anything else can. So again, thank you for your continued support. And I guess you're going to read off names, or?
I am, and congratulations. I certainly can't get this council to show for 105 days, but you do have a couple of Boys and Girls Club alumni sitting up there on the dais.
We sure do. If it would be appropriate, I would love for them to stand so that the kids can see the folks. These folks went to Boys and Girls Clubs as kids, and now they're helping run the city. Pretty cool, huh?
Ask them if they're gold card members.
They're both gold card members in my book. Yeah, you're definitely, for life. You're both gold card members for life. Thank you.
Congratulations to everyone. I'm going to read off a proclamation with your names.
You got it.
And Michael's got some cards for you ready to go, but I'd like to have you guys come by as I read the name. Is that how we'd like to do it?
Read off all the names and we'll have them all come together.
Okay, that'd be great.
Because there's going to be several of them that aren't actually here tonight. But 22, I think.
There's a few of you might have seen here, so I'll give it my best shot here. This is a certificate of recognition on behalf of the Santa Barbara City Council. It is my pleasure to recognize and congratulate all the students who achieved gold card status for their stellar attendance at the West Side unit of the United Boys and Girls Clubs of Santa Barbara County. So the award winners tonight are Ryan Matthew Ayala Alejos, Luis Juarez Carvajal, Sofia Adame Marquez, Giovanni Alexander, Brianna Alvarez Lopez, Emiliano Andrade, Abraham Angles, Jonathan Ariola, Giancarlo Barreto, Rafael Bautista, Iker Bernal Palma, Joseph Briggs, Yeheli Carranza, Brianna Carranza Aranda, Adria Calese Carranza Gutierrez. Oh, come on, you guys, you're killing me up here. Nathan Castillo, Sofia Cruz Segundo, Alessandro Cruz Segundo, Michael De Sales, Michelle Diaz, Joshua Donato, Briella Finn, Robert Flores, Jacob Flores, Neymar Garcia, America Gonzalez, Kiara Gonzalez, Orlando Gonzalez, Aaron Hernandez, Eduardo Hernandez, Jaden Jacobs, Julian Jacobs, Juan Carlos Javier Renteria, Tiago Geronimo, got to think of that close, Brian Juarez, Joaquin Juarez, Colette Kleinibecker, Lillian Kleinibecker, Jose Angel Lopez, Wilver Lopez, Zuleika Lopez, Mateo Marquez, Sebastian Marquez, Maximo Medina, Malaca Mendez, David Morales, Gilani Morales, Mark Ivan Morin, Marcel Morin, Lila Ochoa, Cheyenne Ortiz, Faith Ortiz, Jason Padilla, Vivian Padilla, Alexis Pantoya, Isabella Palez, Raquel Palico, David Plancarte, Zelena Pribble, Angelique Ramos, Anthony Ramos, Mateo Rangel, Brandon Rivas, Oswel Rojas, Mateo Ruiz Cardiel, Jolín Salcido, Tiago Silva Lopez, Madeline Liana Solis Neri, Ivan Solis Neri, Anabel Sosa, Adriana Trujillo, Ruben Trujillo, Abigail Valdivinos, Fernando Vega, Leila Velasquez, Nicolas Velasquez, Joseph Zavala Cortez, Esmeralda Zavaleta Marquina. That's all you get. That's all I got tonight. So congratulations, all you guys. Yeah, let's come on up and let's have some pictures with my colleagues here. Good work, everybody. Yeah, can you guys come on? Yeah, let's come on down and have some pictures with these guys. I'm glad I'm standing on this because I think you're already taller than I am, so.
I went to a Harding school. Is that what you said?
Huh?
You're taller than the mayor, you're
Oh,
down
the one on the west side.
No.
Harding and
Come on in, come on in.
I know,
All right.
that's easy. You guys are have to scoot in.
Scooch in, everybody, scooch in.
Come on in.
Here, I'll go down.
Maybe this way, scooch in.
Al, how you doing?
Count of three, ready, set, 1, 2, 3. Hang on 1 second, because some of the parents want to get photos.
Parents, you want to get pictures? Go ahead.
All right, parents, come on up.
Al, you got somebody up here? Oh.
Congratulations, everyone.
That's so great. Thank you. Thank you, guys. You were like, yes, you were. You were here with Harding School, right? Yeah, all right. All right, good. Good job, you guys. Well done. Thanks, Michael. So let me know when you're doing any like parties over there at dinner.
Oh, yeah, you got
so.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to adjourn for the year 2024. We're honor you guys as the last thing we're doing in this year. So congratulations.